A California police department is refusing to release body cam video, and its legal argument could actually roll back law enforcement transparency across the state.
CBS is suing not just to get the video, but to prevent an agency from effectively rewriting state law.
Yeah, we've been working with law enforcement for nearly a year to try to avoid this lawsuit. But one local agency is simply refusing to release its full video, which the public has a right to see. And if we don't push back, their interpretation of the law could have a ripple effect across the state.
But my favorite part is the binoculars.
These days,
Now they look closer.
7-year-old Sawyer is always on the lookout.
And I keep thinking about bad guys.
And he has good reason.
It was really scary.
Sawyer's mom, Kelsey, decided to take the kids to this popular park last April during spring break.
There were kids all over, kids at camp and kids without parents.
Little did they know, a Highway Patrol Special Task Force had already made what turned out to be a fatal decision: to serve a planned, high-risk search warrant to an armed felon at a public park without clearing the park or notifying local police.
I just really don't understand why they chose this park that day.
Multiple shots fired, suspect, white male.
For days, CHP had been surveilling a felon with a history of running from police. But instead of serving the warrant at his home, they chose to wait until he took his dogs to a busy park.
And then we see cops chasing after a criminal.
Court records allege when officers confronted suspect Eric Abril, he began shooting at them.
Officer confirmed gunshot wound to the chest and hand.
CHP fired back as Abril ran toward the batting cages,
That's when we got on the ground.
where kids were playing.
And then gunshots were fired, roughly 20.
Bullet holes near the batting cages revealed just how close the children were to being shot in the crossfire.
It was terrifying.
Jim McKeegan and his high school sweetheart Patty were out for a walk. They just celebrated their 50th anniversary. It would be their last.
He's going to shoot the hostage.
As local police swarmed the park, Jim was killed and Abril used Patty as a human shield.
I was thinking it would shoot me.
Park staff quickly rushed kids into the library, where they had to hide under tables to avoid the windows.
He was too scared to go to sleep. He would double check all the locks.
Nearly a year later, the community is still desperate for answers and accountability.
I would ask CHP if they would make the same decision if their kids were playing at the park.
Keep in mind, CHP is the governor's police force with jurisdiction across the state.
It could happen to anyone's family at any park.
But CHP won't answer questions or acknowledge any policy changes when serving high-risk warrants.
It feels like they're trying to cover it up.
So we've been searching for answers through public records, including video from that day.
Guys, get down.
Which appears to begin after Mr. McKeegan was killed.
Suspect is in custody.
The sheriff's department hasn't released his coroner's report, but multiple sources tell CBS News it's inconclusive about where the fatal shot came from, meaning it's not clear who fired it.
Whoever's in the field, you're in our backdrop.
Roseville PD, which took over the investigation, says it's confident the suspect fatally shot the victim, but refuses to release its full body camera video, releasing just 4 39-second edited clips,
123 Crossfire, I was the one who fired the shot.
which appear to show officers shooting at each other amid the chaos, but provide little transparency or context for what went wrong that day, the risk to the children, the McKeegans, and to officers.
Drop the gun!
State law requires agencies release any recording that relates to a law enforcement shooting or critical incident. For instance, remember when 14-year-old Valentina was killed trying on quinceañera dresses in a Southern California dressing room? A stray bullet pierced the dressing room wall, killing Valentina, who died in her mother's arms while hiding and praying. Per LAPD policy, based on state law, they had to release the video of the actions and events leading up to and including the critical incident. San Francisco PD has a similar policy and hosts its videos on the city's YouTube channel. But Roseville PD is now attempting to rewrite state law. Instead of releasing recordings that depict an incident involving the discharge of a firearm, they claim they only have to release the video of the discharge of the firearm.
The video is public property.
San Francisco Assemblymember Phil Ting wrote the law that Roseville's trying to change. He worries Roseville's interpretation could prompt other agencies to start withholding video, stressing the public pays for the police cameras and the servers they store that video on, so the video belongs to the public. When you drafted this legislation, did you intend to define the critical incident as only the moments of the discharge of the firearm?
Absolutely not, because in order to provide transparency, you need to know what's happening leading up to the confrontation.
And in California, if a public agency refuses to release a public record,
your only option is to sue.
I imagine it'll be a court decision on this.
Law enforcement consultant John McGinnis supports police transparency, but the former Sacramento County Sheriff also supports Roseville PD in this case.
Roseville PD is saying, we're not going to abide by the law. We're going to make you sue us to get this video, and taxpayers are going to have to foot the bill. Is that fair?
I don't know why they're withholding it, but if they believe they're on solid ground, if they're doing the right thing, I say stand on principle and let another branch of government make that decision.
We've now filed our body camera lawsuit, and Abril is awaiting his trial.
Escape from the hospital.
Now facing additional charges for escaping about a month after the shootout. And in a twist of fate,
I found it at Grandma's house.
he was found hiding in the creek just feet from Sawyer's grandma's front door.
I know 911,
Sawyer's learned a lot over the past year.
but I don't have a phone.
Maybe more than any 7-year-old should have to.
But I do have a plan.
Kelsey's hoping the full body camera video
I would be
will
like
shed light on CHP's plan that day,
dodging and dodging the gun shoots.
providing answers and accountability,
And then I would hide.
so other kids don't feel the need to plan
Far away.
for the next
Now they're close.
CHP shootout.
Now, to be clear, the purpose of fighting for this video is not to air graphic or sensational images. It's to provide context and clarity and closure for a traumatized community. And the purpose of this lawsuit is to prevent one agency from effectively rewriting state law.
He had a history of violence, running from cops and escaping from hospitals. Yet CHP chose to confront this armed suspect, surrounded by kids at day camp. An officer and hostage were shot, another hostage killed, and children traumatized. After he was caught, he escaped from a hospital again, prompting a 2-day manhunt. One suspect, 3 agencies, countless questions, and CBS 13 is getting answers.
April 6th, 2023. An elderly couple was taking a late morning stroll on one of Roseville's many lush walking trails. Nearby, Mahaney Park was filled with kids at spring break day camps put on by the city of Roseville, ranked among the safest cities in the country.
I'm just trying to play some ball.
But that safety and security was about to be shattered.
We were hitting in the batting cages.
By a fatal law enforcement decision.
Shots fired at Mahaney
To
Park.
serve a search warrant to an armed felon at a public park.
Multiple shots fired, suspect, white male, black jacket.
Court records reveal Eric Abril was a suspect in a freeway shooting 2 months earlier in Sacramento, 20 miles away. A California Highway Patrol Special Task Force had been surveilling Abril in Roseville, where he'd been staying with his mother.
He has 2 dogs with him that are following him.
Instead of serving their search warrant at Abril's home, Highway Patrol decided to follow him to the Mahaney Dog Park.
And then we see cops chasing after a criminal.
Court records reveal as Abril walked back to his car, officers confronted him.
Said, police get down.
That's when Abril allegedly pulled out a pistol and began shooting at officers, hitting one.
We have the officer confirmed gunshot wound to the chest and hand.
CHP fired back as Abril ran toward the batting cages.
That's when we got on the ground.
Where kids were playing.
And then gunshots were fired. Roughly 20.
Bullet holes near the batting cages revealed just how close the children were to being shot in the crossfire.
We still have active gunfire all around.
Ethan and Kyle say Abril tripped on one of their baseballs as he ran by.
He was like 4 feet, 3 feet from Kyle.
Yeah.
And he dropped the gun.
But Abril picked up that gun and kept running to a nearby ravine, where Jim McKeegan and his high school sweetheart Patty were out for a walk.
He's tucked down in the creek.
Jim and Patty had just celebrated their 50th anniversary. It would be their last.
He's going to shoot the hostage.
Abril took the couple hostage, and within minutes, Jim was dead, Patty was shot, and a community was forever changed.
It was terrifying.
Camp counselors tried to shield young kids from the chaos.
I was stuck in a room called the Black Hole. They just took us to the library and waited 3 hours.
I was still terrified. You know, both my kids are in the camp, of course, it's scary.
You can still see the scars left by the bullets just feet from where the kids dove for cover. It's been 6 months since the Mahaney Park shootout, and we still don't have answers to basic questions about what's being done to prevent this from happening again. There are now multiple agencies involved, and each appear to be withholding public information. CHP won't even discuss the decision to serve a search warrant to an armed felon at a public park that day. They're also withholding dash camera audio and video. Roseville PD, who arrested Abril and has now taken over the investigation, will only release seconds of their body camera video, raising questions about what they're trying to hide.
Where's he at? I can't see him.
And the Placer County Sheriff, which has Abril in custody, is now refusing to release the coroner's report, which could confirm he shot the hostage and not police. But we'll circle back to that later. If you have to choose between serving a warrant at a home or serving a warrant at a busy park, which do you choose?
There's no perfect venue.
But like many, law enforcement consultant and former Sacramento County Sheriff John McGinnis has concerns about CHP's decisions that day.
This is a person that has been identified as having a propensity for violence. So is that a foreseeable outcome that violence will be the product when this effort is made? I think it is.
But according to Roseville PD, CHP never told local police they were planning to serve a high-risk warrant at Mahaney Park that day.
It's a basic fundamental that should be taken care of before this kind of effort is executed.
Had they known, Roseville PD might have warned CHP about the city-run day camps at the park.
Maybe has one, possibly two victims on it.
And a simple Google search would have revealed Abril had a history of running from police and hiding in a ravine. After a violent attack in 2014, he led police on a lengthy chase along the San Luis Obispo Creek. But CHP won't say if they consider that before serving their warrant at a Roseville park surrounded by creeks and ravines.
I have no doubt that there are internal reviews taking place and lessons to be learned.
But if there are, CHP won't acknowledge them. The agency declined our interview requests and wouldn't answer written questions, stating the department respectfully cannot answer any questions that may influence decisions criminally or administratively that remain under investigation. CHP is the governor's police force with jurisdiction across the state. Next time, it could be your neighborhood park, your kid's day camp, your loved one taken hostage and shot dead.
Responding to our CBS Sacramento investigation, the CHP released never-before-seen dash camera video from the initial moments. For months, the CHP claimed that video didn't exist, and local police are still refusing to release full body camera video from that shootout. It has many asking, what are they hiding?
So, of course, Julie Watts investigates the public's right to see the footage and the questionable law enforcement claims.
Officer down. CHP officer is hit.
39 seconds. That's all the video law enforcement has been willing to release from a multi-agency officer-involved shootout at a public park surrounded by city-run day camps. An officer and a hostage were shot, another hostage killed, and a community was traumatized. For 7 months, we've been fighting for answers and access to the full video from that day. The shootout began with a controversial decision by Highway Patrol to serve a planned high-risk search warrant to an armed felon at a public park during the peak of spring break without notifying local police.
Suspect is in custody.
It ended with local law enforcement coming to CHP's rescue. But Roseville PD has refused to release more than 39 seconds of its body camera video, and CHP claimed it didn't have any dash camera video. Turned out, it did. After months of requests, CBS Sacramento was first to obtain the first 25 minutes of the dash camera video from the one marked CHP cruiser there to back up undercover agents serving the warrant. The video appears to begin just after the suspect allegedly fired the initial shots at a CHP officer. You can see several undercover officers running toward the batting cages, where we now know children were diving for cover in the crossfire.
It was terrifying.
The CHP officers weren't wearing body cameras, but Roseville PD officers were, and that agency is still only willing to release 39 seconds from their body cameras.
Whoever's in the field, you're in our backdrop.
Which appears to show officers shooting at each other.
123 Crossfire, I was the one who fired the shots.
But provides little transparency or context for what went wrong that day, the risk to the public, the hostages, and to officers.
Drop the gun!
Now, state law requires agencies to release any recording that relates to an officer-involved shooting or critical incident. Remember when 14-year-old Valentina was killed by a stray LAPD bullet while trying on quinceañera dresses in a Southern California dressing room with her mother? In the interest of full disclosure and compliance with the law, LAPD released extensive footage from their arrival through the fatal shots. Per LAPD policy, based on state law, they had to release video of the actions and events leading up to and including the critical incident. San Francisco PD has a similar policy and hosts its videos on the city YouTube channel. While some agencies release edited versions of videos, it's standard practice to show the video leading up to the shooting to provide context and transparency. Or at least it was. Roseville PD is now attempting to rewrite state law. Instead of releasing recordings that depict an incident involving the discharge of a firearm, they claim they only have to release video of the discharge of the firearm.
The video is public property.
San Francisco Assemblymember Phil Ting wrote the law in question. He stresses the public pays for the police cameras and the servers they store that video on, so the video belongs to the public. They're arguing that under your legislation, they're only required to release the 39 seconds when the bullets actually left the gun. When you drafted this legislation, did you intend to define the critical incident as only the moments of the discharge of the firearm?
Absolutely not, because if that was the case, that would have been written into law. In order to provide transparency, you need to know what's happening leading up to the confrontation.
Now, it's very likely that the body camera video will reveal what most of us already believe, that Roseville PD acted heroically and stopped an armed suspect from injuring more people. But the fact that they're not willing to release the video, essentially rewriting state law, sets a scary precedent for all future police shootings. And in California, if a public agency refuses to release a public record, your only option is to sue.
I imagine it'll be a court decision on this.
Law enforcement consultant John McGinnis supports police transparency, but the former Sacramento County Sheriff also supports Roseville PD in this case.
Roseville PD is saying, we're not going to abide by the law. We're going to make you sue us to get this video, and taxpayers are going to have to foot the bill. Is that fair?
I don't know why they're withholding it, but if they believe they're on solid ground, if they're doing the right thing, I say stand on principle and let another branch of government make that decision.
He believes the primary purpose of body camera video should be for evidence in a criminal trial, not public information. But experts say when it comes to a police shooting, California law is clear.
The law must be construed broadly in favor of disclosure.
David Loy from the First Amendment Coalition explains law enforcement can blur or redact parts of the video to protect victims' privacy, but can only delay releasing the video more than 45 days if the agency can demonstrate it substantially interferes with an ongoing investigation. But Roseville PD isn't arguing that.
When the public does not get the full story, it begins to look like a cover-up.
According to Roseville PD, the agency is confident the suspect fatally shot the victim, but Roseville won't release its full body camera video or drone video, and the Placer County Sheriff won't release the victim's autopsy report, which could confirm the suspect shot the hostage and not officers.
If you believe that you acted heroically or appropriately, why are you hiding this?
We continue in part 3 of our series. Julie Watts investigates Eric Gabriel's escape from a local hospital.
She's also highlighting the one agency that has been transparent and what CHP can learn from local law enforcement.
A murder suspect escaped from the hospital.
The fear was palpable.
Officers looking in backyards and around your neighborhood.
Streets normally filled with kids, instead overrun by armored vehicles. Families across multiple cities locked in their homes for the first time since the pandemic. By sundown, children were forced to fall asleep to the sound of police helicopters circling overhead, searching for an escaped inmate.
Shots fired at Mahaney Park.
3 months earlier, almost to the day, Erica Brill was arrested following a deadly shootout with police at a public park surrounded by kids at spring break day camp.
Maybe has one, possibly two victims.
A CHP task force was attempting to serve a Brill with a search warrant connected to an unprovoked freeway shooting 2 months earlier, 20 miles away, where the victim's dash cam caught a Brill, a convicted felon, shooting at his car. But Abril had a long history of prior felony convictions, resisting arrest, and attempted escapes, including an escape from a hospital after an arrest in 2014.
Possibly escaped inmate from the hospital.
Nearly a decade later, he did it again. According to an independent investigation following Abril's escape, he was brought here to Sutter Roseville after possible seizures while in jail. Roughly 2 days after he arrived, just before 3 a.m., Abril managed to slip his only cuff off his right hand before escaping out of his room and down a staircase, while the only deputy assigned to guard him was in the bathroom. As you can see, the hospital is surrounded by a green belt filled with creeks and ravines where Abril has been known to hide.
Looks like he was last seen hitting the green belt just west of the labor and delivery.
Roughly 40 minutes later, he was seen on a ring camera from a house along that green belt about 1.5 miles away. But it would be 33 hours before he was finally captured nearby. The manhunt re-traumatizing families still processing the controversial CHP Park shootout, prompting a chorus of questions.
How is it possible that this man was allowed to escape?
How do we prevent this from happening again?
And who may be held responsible?
This is a high-risk escape for sure.
Criminal justice research scientist Bryce Peterson explains escapes happen more often than most people realize. In fact, a recent CBS News analysis of data from 26 states revealed more than 1,100 documented escapes from law enforcement over just the past 5 years. But Peterson says many escapes aren't reported, and most don't end in violence. Though, in Abril's case,
he's already demonstrated a proclivity towards violence, and those individuals are often more likely to use violence to facilitate their escape.
I take full responsibility.
But Peterson says, to the sheriff's credit, the Placer County Sheriff immediately commissioned a third-party review.
This should have never happened.
The report highlighted several shortcomings in existing policy.
We'll make sure it never happens again.
Which the sheriff publicly committed to immediately change based on the recommendations.
The public nature by which they did it, I think, is very commendable.
He says transparency is crucial to regaining public trust, but in this case, the sheriff's public report has been the exception, not the rule.
We still have active gunfire all around.
For instance, CHP has yet to acknowledge any policy changes following its controversial decision to serve a planned, high-risk search warrant to an armed felon at a public park surrounded by spring break day camps without notifying local police. And CHP has yet to explain why it violated state law for months, denying the existence of this dash camera video, only recently releasing an excerpt in response to our ongoing investigation. In Roseville PD, which came to CHP's rescue during the shootout, will only release 39 seconds of its body camera video and none of its drone video, raising questions about what it's trying to hide. Meanwhile, the sheriff's department is still refusing to release the hostage's coroner's report, which could confirm he was shot by the suspect and not officers.
If you run, you will be shot. You understand?
It was ultimately a fourth agency, Rockland PD,
It's confirmed it's him.
that finally captured Abril after his escape.
Matches the description.
They immediately released their photos and video in an effort to bring some closure to a community.
And we have the orange pants.
Twice traumatized by one suspect, 3 agencies, and countless questions.
Guys, get out. They're still shooting.
Never before seen video from the CHP Mahaney Park shootout in Roseville last year. CBS 13 exclusively obtained nearly 7 hours of police video.
Well, for 9 months, CHP claimed this video did not exist. Investigative reporter Julie Watt shows us it does, and it provides some new context of the deadly shooting that traumatized a quiet community.
The video you're about to see is hard to watch. Out of respect for the victim's family, we've chosen not to show any images of the victims, the McKeegans, even blurred. But the video does clearly show how local law enforcement came to CHP's rescue that day, and it calls into question why the governor's state police force claimed for 9 months this video didn't exist.
The suspect is in custody.
These are the first images of Eric Abril surrendering, one of his dogs by his side. The video shows officers from multiple local agencies moving in to arrest Abril. Just off screen, they're working to save his hostages' lives. For 9 months, we've been fighting for answers and access to the full video from that day. The shootout began with a controversial decision by the California Highway Patrol to serve a planned, high-risk search warrant to an armed felon at a public park surrounded by spring break day camps without notifying local police.
And then we see cops chasing after a criminal.
Bullet holes near the batting cages revealed just how close the children were to being shot in the crossfire.
We still have active gunfire all around.
Ethan and Kyle say Abril tripped on one of their baseballs as he ran by.
He was like 4 feet, 3 feet from Kyle.
Yeah.
And he dropped the gun.
But Abril picked up that gun and kept running to a nearby ravine, where Jim McKeegan and his high school sweetheart Patty were out for a walk.
He's going to shoot the hostage.
Abril took the couple hostage, and within minutes, Jim was dead, Patty was shot, and a community was forever changed.
It was terrifying.
The new CHP chopper and drone video seemed to begin after Jim was killed, and video we've chosen not to air appears to show Abril shooting Patty before he surrenders.
Maybe has 1, possibly 2 victims on it.
CHP has yet to explain why it violated state law for months, denying the existence of any video from that day, only recently releasing excerpts after law enforcement sources confirmed to CBS Sacramento that the video did in fact exist. Roseville PD, which came to CHP's rescue during the shootout, will only release 39 seconds of its body camera video and none of its drone video, raising questions about what it's trying to hide. Meanwhile, the sheriff's department is refusing to release the hostage's coroner's report, which could confirm Mr. McKeegan was shot by the suspect and not CHP officers in the crossfire.
Guys, get down.
And CHP has yet to acknowledge any policy changes following its controversial decision to serve a high-risk search warrant at the park that day. A concern for many who want answers and accountability, noting CHP is the governor's police force with jurisdiction across the state. Next time, it could be your neighborhood park, your kid's day camp, your loved one taken hostage and shot dead. Now, we're still working to get answers from CHP, and we're working to get more body camera video to shed light on the beginning of the shootout when children were nearby.
And that's what it all comes down to. I sit right next to you in the newsroom. Yes. The question you have had from the beginning as you've relentlessly worked to get this video is, why did they do this at a park during spring break when you had all of these children playing nearby?
Yeah, and that's what we really were hoping to get from this. You know, we chose not to air some video that showed Mrs. McKeegan being used as a human shield. It actually showed her, it appears to show her being shot in the arm by Mr. Abril. I didn't want to show that because the point of getting this video was not to show you sensational video, right? The point of getting this video was to look at what led up to this incident. It's been 9 months and we still don't have answers about what's being done to make sure this never happens again.